All right. Welcome. And it's always so weird streaming, just knowing there's other people on the other end. So, if anyone wants to let me know how my volume is, that'd be great. Otherwise, I'll just start. Let's see. So, the whole reason I'm doing this is because I've heard a lot of people say that after seeing the type of person that Charlie Kirk was, it's inspired them to start reading the Bible or going back to church. And if someone hasn't been reading the Bible or going to church, there's probably a reason, and that reason actually might be pretty decent reason, right? I think people within organized religion, can't really see a reason not to be in it, but someone who either was pushed out or isn't in it, obviously sees reasons not to be in it. So there's usually kind of this irreconcilable difference between whether you see value in going to church or you don't. And I'm hoping that in a way I can bridge the gap, kind of like, my favorite author, who's C.S. Lewis. Um, he wrote a book, Mere Christianity. This was during World War II. And he realized that, the people needed to unite to win this battle. And so he started doing a lecture series on the radio, Mere Christianity, just to break it down, because there's so many divisions between the different sects of Christianity, and that's one thing that a lot of people coming back. I was going to look this up and I forgot actually. I think someone told me that Charlie Kirk's wife is Catholic and he's Protestant. I'm not sure if that's true. If anyone knows in the chat wants to let me know, but and then you have someone like Candace Owens that she just started going back to Catholic Church. Also, Nick Fuentes is Catholic, but then you have Tucker Carlson is Protestant, and there's all these different sects. And so when someone is interested, they see a person that's Christian and is Christ-like enough to shine that light of Christ. It inspires them to get closer to Christ, but then they realize that they are coming in contact or running into like thousands of years worth of divisions between sects, and there's like a lot to unpack there. So I'm hoping to just give a little bit of a few kind of things that I think might help be able to look past some of those things that can be very off-putting. And hopefully it helps, because I wouldn't want this this spark of faith that Charlie Kirk started. I wouldn't want that to just get put out by whatever it is. Even say you decide to go back to church, it might not be, then your friend might be like, oh, well, why didn't you come to my church? You went to someone else's church or something. It's it's really hard. In any group situation, there's something called narcissism of small differences, and there becomes a hierarchy, and a weird kind of competition for how to get up this hierarchy, when really Christianity should be about Christ. It should be about picking up your cross and following him, which he kind of reduced the law down to pretty straightforward things. He says, love God and love your neighbor. And so I hope to, that's one thing is anytime you find something that doesn't come back to those, doesn't tie directly back to those in the scriptures, you probably not seeing what you should be seeing, because that's what it should be pointing. And the problem is some of the Bible was written in Greek, even though the oldest copy is in Greek, and even though Christ spoke Aramaic, and there was quite some time between, I mean, the oldest fragments I think were like still 150 years after the fact. So it's there's we're even just the gap in translation from Christ saying something in Aramaic, the oldest copy being in Greek, like certain, the Greek language carries the Greek culture in it. So there just aren't words to express certain things, right? And then you take that and then try and translate that to English or whatever language. I speak Spanish pretty fluently, and so I've read the Bible in English and in Spanish, and I've gone through some interlinear with Hebrew and actually Greek as well. And man, the differences are just quite huge, and that can be daunting. For me, my favorite way to approach it is, um, one with a question, but you know mostly around a word. And that's something I didn't even plan. I had this thought like earlier, like this morning when I was watching Charlie's funeral. I was like, I just really don't want people to lose this spark. So, I didn't have anything necessarily I was going to say. And so anyway, there's a scripture. Actually, you know what? I do have it on here. Let's see. Let's see what we can do. Um, I I scrambled to put them all on the same page so I wouldn't lose them. Maybe it was this one. Looking for yeah, there we go. Okay. So hopefully that's pretty visible. So in guys, it's even like I like hesitated to even want to stream because I know all too well the different comments I'm going to get because everyone has their way of interpreting things. um for me, med school kind of opened my mind up to a certain way of thinking, which was the idea of a differential diagnosis, where you put up all the potential things that could cause the problem, and then you go on substantiating them, right? So, um, so I'm just going like we should allow all those things to be on the table, and then it's up to us to substantiate them. If you ever get to one and you think it's 100%, that's probably dangerous. So for me, I get as many as up there as possible, and I genuinely try to substantiate all of them. And if one's really not correct, you really can't. It almost even becomes a game. You're like, okay, I'm going to take one. One of the potential theories behind this, and just really put weight on it, and just make sure that it doesn't, and so that's just the thing. So please don't get offended if I completely do a interpretation is completely different. The other thing I find that is really important is, I'm not of the belief, the hermetic belief of as above, so below, right? And although there is some like some things that are spiritual, and there's things that are physical, and they, it's one is symbolic of the other, right? And so it's kind of difficult when you have this huge text compiled. I mean, even there's the Ethiopian Bible, which has different books and different translations of certain things. And anyway, like certain things people take literally, certain things people take spiritually. And when you really study all the different denominations, it kind of makes you wonder what things people are taking literal or spiritual, and what they stand to gain from that. So for me, I think that it's easiest to take it all spiritually, um, leaving space for it to also be physical. To me, it really doesn't matter, because what I find is the spiritual helps you change something inside of you, right? C.S. Lewis talks about the innermost part of you that chooses, and it's like a compass and it can turn. And so, for me, the thing is that the roadmap isn't necessarily straightforward, and there's competing virtues, and so what does it mean to love your neighbor? Does love mean what your neighbor wants you to do right now, or what they would want you to do in the future them, right? And that's hard, right? Let's say that someone comes to you, and they have a problem, and they just want to complain about it, right? Well, part of you would say, well, they want me to just, you know, listen or something, right? Whereas the long-term them wants you to help them understand the problem and find a solution, right? So, there are these competing things, like whether, what virtue is it that you use in that time? Is it patience? Is it charity? Is it courage, right? And these virtues kind of compete with each other, and that's the problem. Is most people end up getting this sort of identity with one of the virtues, like, oh, I'm always the listener, right? It's just like people love it when I listen, so I just always listen. And it's like, okay, well, that's we weren't meant to be one dimensional, right? And that's something that a lot of different faiths have, right? The different virtues, and even in a broader sense, other types of spirituality. I mean, even to like the druidic sort of, those kind of magic sort of things. The core of all those is actually that they surround themselves by the names of God, right? Because Christ would be the Prince of Peace, right? But he would also be, our, oh man, it wasn't our champion, our, there's these different ones. So it's like, is he going to fight for us? It says that he's the one who fights for us, but also he's the Prince of Peace. So these different competing virtues, right? If you named all the different aspects of God, the ones that would endure, that would always be there, they would kind of be in a circle. And so the best thing to do would be to center yourself in, like, identify the virtues, define them, and center yourself in the middle of all of them. Find the holy place, and which symbolically, that finding that middle is like climbing up a mountain, right? Because it's not straightforward, and each time, you try to love in truth, right? You don't want to just love like Romeo and Juliet, and right? Like, was that love? It was really emotional, right? But it was totally stupid, right? Um, and so you have to love in truth, and that's confusing. I mean, even Christ in the garden, right? He said, when he was praying for our sins, his disciples fell asleep. And this is this is one of the reasons I haven't wanted to do this, is because, like, I know lots of people have these like sacred cows that they don't even want to talk about, right? But it's interesting because I've never heard anyone talk about that. Christ comes back when he's praying, and he comes to his disciples, he finds that they're asleep, and he says, why couldn't you stay awake with me for just 1 hour, right? And I mean, think about that. Like, does that sound kind of like, would you feel ashamed if you had fallen asleep and then Jesus said that to you? Like, really, you couldn't stay awake with me for 1 hour? Um, and so they wake up. They're like, yeah, we're here with you. We got this. And then he goes back and he prays, and he comes back again. And they're asleep. And he says to the same thing again. He's like, really? Like, come on. This is like 1 hour that I needed you guys. I'm doing something kind of big here. And, I really need you guys to stay awake, right? And then he prays again. He comes back the third time, and they're asleep. And he says, sleep on. And, some people would be, the reason they don't talk about that is because it would seem like Christ changed his mind, right? Either he gave up on his disciples and said, yep. Or maybe maybe he realized something, which it's a weird idea, like Christ, where we're supposed to follow Christ, but we have to imagine that he didn't learn or grow in any way. That's totally heretical for most people to consider, but you know, it inspires me to think that he realized, because he says you save your energy because you'll need it for later, right? So he knew that people would wake up on their own time, and that was okay. And I think that was a realization he made, um, and that's that's what we want. We want other people to wake up to all the things we've woken up to exactly when we've woken up to them, and that's just not how it works. We have to realize, like, no, it's okay. There's like people learn different things in different orders, and also just the burden of truth is pretty heavy. So we each have a different thing we're working on, a different cross we're carrying, and you know, are we really at the level where we can guess what someone's next step is? So back to this idea of virtue, um, and this is just why. Anyway, so this scripture in John chapter 1 verse 1, it says, "In the beginning was the Word." And what if you said, "In the beginning was only a word"? Like in the beginning, when you first talk about truth, the only thing you know about truth is the word truth, right? You don't know what, the whole body of science is. You don't know all the answers, right? Even love, you don't know really what love is. I mean, it's something that seems to come natural, but also, there's times in our lives when we realize, like, I don't really know what love would be like in this situation, right? So, thinking like in the beginning, all we have is a word to describe something, and that word is with God. It's something that comes from a good origin. Those things are real. We just can't describe them. Um, and it doesn't mean that it's not actually attached to God, right? That it's not usable. And this is where, man, I didn't plan on going on this whole kind of tangent, but for me, one thing that was very enlightening was the idea of calculus, where you could do a math problem that theoretically was impossible because you can't divide by zero, but you could divide by something small, like less and less, to where it was essentially zero, and you would essentially find the right answer. And that was like just so cool to realize. And I think that thing we're dividing by is maybe our own ego, our own pride, our own identity, our own preconceptions about things, right? That's what we're trying to reduce down so that we can, find the truth, right? And it can be good enough to be usable. And each time you use it, you get more data. And that's one thing about life, is that when you can either look at things as far as like sunk costs, this is a loss or a gain, this is good fortune because I'm getting something, or this is bad fortune because I'm losing something. Or you could say this is all data, and this is data that's now allowing me to have a better understanding of life and love, and therefore gives me more power. And so that's one thing. I think that data that we're getting, those, I think it's worth it. I think the value of it grows, and transcends this life. So, um, all right, man. So let's see, where did I want to start actually? Okay, yeah. So, oh man, this is a vulnerable thing. This is kind of so let's see. All right. So this is an example of what could be symbolic and what not, right? Um, and I remember it was actually this scripture. Where is it? Let's see. in Second Kings. Well, there's another verse. I couldn't find the exact verse, I think, but it was talking about the sons of the prophets, and it was saying that there was 50, I think, original. In another verse, there was 60, and I was like, okay, well, the prophet couldn't have had that many kids. I mean, that would be like, if you imagine one, every, like, 50% of the kids being boys. I mean, that'd be like 120 kids or 100 kids, and it's like you'd have to have like a lot of wives. I mean, who knows? Maybe that was the case. I mean, it turns out it just was, and that's you can, I guess, look us up, that it was referring to a group, right? That the thesis I'm going to make is that the word sons doesn't mean just like a biological son, right? And so when I first started looking up, I did, I get whatever Bible app and I do just a word search. And so I looked up the word son, like when's the first time that son comes up in the Bible? And it was, I think, Genesis 4, right? So it says, now Adam knew his wife, and she conceived and bore Cain, saying, I've gotten a man with the help of the Lord. And again, she bore his brother Abel. Now Abel was a keeper of sheep, and Cain a worker of the ground. In the course of time, Cain brought to the Lord an offering of the fruit of the ground, and Abel also brought the firstborn of his flock and of fat portions. And the Lord had regarded Abel and his offering, but for Cain and his offering he had no regard. So Cain was very angry, and his face fell. The Lord said, Cain, why are you angry, and why is your face fallen? If you do well, will you not be accepted? And if you do not do well, sin is crouching at the door. Its desire is for you, and you must rule over it. So this is one of those things that, I mean, I think they're called a Mishnah or whatever in some types of, well, in Judaism, where they find something that seems like a problem in the scriptures, and then they kind of make up a solution for it. And you have to have a certain amount of clout to be able to do a Mishnah or whatever. I think that, when those holes you fill in lead to some kind of, I don't know, like the nature of the spiritual world, as opposed to just this is how you love, right? This is loving God and loving your neighbor, right? Like, I think it's more important that these things go back to that rather than to some kind of, bizarre, um, uh, you know, theosophical type thing. So Cain spoke to Abel, his brother, and they were in the field. Cain rose up against his brother Abel and killed him. Then the Lord said to Cain, where is Abel, your brother? And he says, I do not know. Am I my brother's keeper? And the Lord said, what have you done? The voice of your brother's blood is crying from the ground. And now you are cursing the ground, which has opened its mouth to receive your brother's blood from your hand. When you work the ground, it shall no longer yield its strength. Okay, so this is, I guess, the curse that God gives, or it's just maybe just the natural, like, consequence of his actions, right? I mean, sometimes people act as if God is some man in the sky that can arbitrarily pick to make your life miserable or nice, and sometimes it might how things are translated or whatever, it might just be that's just the way things are, right? It's like that's the consequence of what you did. And I guess we could go into that, but that exact example. But let's move on. You shall be a fugitive and a wanderer on earth, right? So I guess maybe we will. So the thing is, it's like, look, if people know that you're the type of person that kills people, right? Maybe people are going to see you as a risk. Like the, kind of Mossad's, their motto is if someone might kill you, wake up earlier and kill them first, right? So if they're thinking like, man, like this guy can't get along, he's probably going to kill us at some point. If he killed his own brother, we're definitely going to get killed. So they might just kill him, right? It's the same thing, kind of like recently when Israel attacked Qatar, and it's like, that kind of sets a really weird international precedent. Like, so it's just like now do you want a precedent of like, hey, we honor our word, right? Like something like about our, I have several friends that are in the military, the U.S. military, and they're like, no man gets left behind. Like they will literally all, doesn't matter what happens, like they're going to go back in and get you. And so all the soldiers know, like they can take big risks for the team, knowing that people are going to come in and save them if things go south, right? So it seems kind of just like God is just saying, look, like you're setting an awful precedent here, right? And I don't usually use this. Anyway, Cain said to the Lord, my punishment is greater than I can bear. And it's like, I mean, you literally killed your brother, right? Like that's just what it is. And he says, oh, no, yeah, it's greater than I can bear. Behold, you have driven me today away from the ground, and from your face I shall be hidden. I shall be a fugitive and a wanderer on the earth, and whosoever finds me will kill me. Then the Lord said unto him, not so. Right? So, I mean, it's kind of interesting, right? Here, like, Cain is catastrophizing, saying like, oh, you hate me. I mean, it almost sounds like a borderline personality disorder, right? Like, it's just like, God's like, no, I'm just trying to explain to you there's consequences, right? Like, if you just willy-nilly kill people, people might just willy-nilly kill you, right? Like, that's like the whole thing is that that's why nations form together, is because it's like, hey, look, like it's all in our best interest to have each other's back, because that makes us all stronger, right? We're stronger together. It's a pretty straightforward thing, but it's actually really hard. How many people do you know that you trust? And I think that's something, we lost someone that was very, trustworthy, which, Charlie Kirk. And, I think that should make us think like, one, we should be that person that people trust. There's certain things that we should do, just to make sure that people know that they can trust us. There's the scripture, we love God because he loved us first, right? So it is the godly thing to do to love first, because it's vulnerable, right? C.S. Lewis, that's one of my favorite quotes, is he says, to love at all is to be vulnerable. And he's actually, I should just read it because it's so good. But I don't want to butcher it. To love it all is to be vulnerable. Let's see. Yeah, to love it all is to be vulnerable. Love anything and your heart will be wrung and possibly broken. If you want to make sure of keeping it intact, you must give it to no one, not even an animal. Wrap it carefully round with little hobbies and little luxuries. Avoid all entanglements. Lock it up safe in the casket or coffin of your selfishness. But in that casket, safe, dark, motionless, airless, it will change. It will not be broken. It will become unbreakable, impenetrable, irredeemable. To love is to be vulnerable. That's from C.S. Lewis's The Four Loves. Highly recommend. Actually, my favorite is Screwtape Letters. Second favorite is The Four Loves. Third favorite is The Great Divorce. And that one's slow at the beginning, but man, it picks up. And then fourth is Mere Christianity. I think, yeah. just because I'm not the specific doctrinal kind of things don't appeal to me as much. I think the other ones, like the Four Loves, is a must read for everyone. So it's super short. There's also YouTube videos that go over it. So yeah, I highly recommend that. So here, it's interesting. Like God and Cain are not on the same page, and God's saying like it's not like, we don't get to see what it was about Cain's offering um, that he didn't like. And I do, in a way, depending on how this shook out, kind of empathize with Cain, right? Because imagine, Abel is his younger brother, and let's say that Adam said, is inspired by God and says, "Hey, all of what we're doing looks forward to Christ, and Christ is going to be this unblemished lamb that will be sacrificed, and so we need to do this offering, right?" And so imagine that Cain goes to Abel and says, "Hey, I'll give you some of my fruit and my vegetables for, a lamb I can sacrifice." Like, and imagine that Abel says, "Well, the best lamb, the most unblemished lamb, is going to father, and the next best one is going to mother, and I'm taking the third best one, so you can have the fourth best one," right? And in this kind of immature thinking, if he was like, it's like there would be nothing that Cain could do to have the most unblemished lamb. But is that really, was he missing the mark? Right? Was that the purpose, or was it just, this is a symbolic thing that will make you think, this lamb had a long a long time ahead of it, right? And that there's um that we do, I don't know, we do sacrifice, these opportunities come up, and you know they come at a cost, right? I mean, one time there was a car accident when I was in a foreign country, and um, I went to help the guy, and the townspeople thought he did it on purpose, even though apparently he had a seizure, but he like had hit a lady, and they said they were willing to kill me to get to him. And that was the craziest thing ever. And this was in Dominica Med School, and yeah, it was right before the election, so people were just really, and there's only like 70,000 people on the island, and so I mean, one vote matters. I mean, like, but I mean, this guy was pretty messed up. Like he was, almost unconscious, and the lady was definitely dead. Um, and so I was trying to help him, and I didn't realize. And all of a sudden, I see like hands start reaching around me, and um, I turn around, and they're like, "Get out of our way! This is justice," and and so then we were in this like standoff, me and this kind of crowd of people in the middle of the kind of main city. Actually, it was the main city, Rousseau, um, and I saw this guy. I'd pulled, the truck had turned over, and I'd probably can't see it from here, but there's yeah, anyway. I pulled, like, the truck was on its side, and I was going to try and pull him out through the windshield, and so I pulled off the windshield, and but his leg was pinned. I realized that after I got to him, and so then we flipped the truck over. It was kind of weird because no one wanted to help me, so it was like me and like two other people, like this whole crowd just like watching. I'm like, dude, we got to get this guy out. So then. So I didn't really think much. I mean, there were lots of things were going on. So I was, so anyway, I was in this standoff with this whole like mob of people. And this one guy picks up some of the, broken cement that was there because he hit this big, like 5 foot kind of retaining wall type thing. And I knew that if he started throwing things, that everyone would start throwing things, and that, I couldn't, I mean, I couldn't deal with 200 people throwing concrete, you know, blocks at me, or chunks at me. And so I pointed at him and I was just like, drop it. And he knew that I would have just gone straight for him. And anyway, he was just a crackhead. But then there was this guy that was like totally jacked. I mean, I'm 6'4", and this guy was like way taller than me, just like, just jacked, no shirt on. He pushes his way through the crowd with his chest, and looking at me, he says, "I'm going to finish this." And I remember thinking, I was like, what could I do? And I like thought like, I could punch him in the neck. And so I said a prayer, I'm just like, God, that's the only thing I can think to do. Like, is that a good idea? And I kind of got this inspiration. It's like, he's not going to care if you punch him in the throat. Probably because he was on PCP. Definitely a high chance that was the case. And so my head just dropped in this, like, I didn't know what I could do. And then I looked down at my hand and I saw that there was this blood, just this sickle of blood. And I knew my hand had like hurt, but I didn't like think that I was cut. And there was just, I mean, it was huge, this massive, just sickle of coagulated blood. And I saw that. I was like, that's gross. And I was like, that's gross. And so when that guy came up, I took my bloody hand and I shoved it in his face. And he went stumbling back into the crowd. I mean, they're really superstitious there. So, he was not, yeah. Anyway, so I was like, oh, you guys like blood, do you? And so I start like flicking blood from my hand onto this crowd. And they're like, you're crazy. I'm like, I'm crazy. You're crazy. You're trying to kill this innocent guy. And it was kind of interesting because, I realized later, right, that it's like, in the weirdest way possible, I saved that guy with my blood. That's totally, totally insane, but it totally is true. And so it came at a cost, though, right? I mean, man, the immediate like PTSD that I got was actually insane. I didn't really believe in PTSD until that. But I mean, I couldn't sleep for 3 days almost, like just couldn't at all sleep. And I had 2 huge exams right after that. Oh my gosh, it was miserable. And I only had 2, like there was just the bookwork exam and then the clinical exam. So I mean, it was like my whole entire grade for the semester was reliant on that. And I couldn't sleep. So I mean, it came at a cost, right? But like so many things. I mean, even just the empathy for PTSD. I mean, I have something called aphantasia, which is like you don't have like a mind's eye. So I just don't experience sort of, I guess, trauma in the same way as other people. But I was just walking down the road and several days later, and I smelt like it was like a truck was going that had burning tar from, they were going to go patch a road or whatever. And like immediately I dropped to the ground, like towards like the fetal position. And I stopped myself like right before I hit the ground. And I was like, wait, this doesn't make any sense. And I look up, I see like the flatbed truck with the tar on the back. And I was like, okay, I have to remind myself that next time I experience this, the most likely thing isn't that someone just died from a car accident and, I'm going to have to fight a crowd. The most likely thing is someone's like patching a road. And yeah, so so there was so much that came from that, but it was a sacrifice, right? And it does feel that it's too much to bear sometimes. I mean, man, when I couldn't sleep the second night, I was going crazy. I mean, I'd already been having a problem sleeping, but that made it so much worse. So, that's the thing is we look at these stories, and people kind of tend to move towards, oh, Cain, he's wandering the earth, maybe he's Bigfoot or whatever. It's like, who knows whether that's true. Doesn't really matter. um I think the most important thing is symbolically, how does this help you, right? People want to put themselves in a story, and they want to identify with a certain character, like, oh, I'm Harry Potter, oh, I'm Hermione Granger, like, oh, I'm Ron because I have red hair. And it's like, the reality of symbolism, especially dream symbolism, is that you're every character in a story. So if you can't relate to a character, it's because you're blocking that. There is a part of you that that is symbolically like each character, right? So, I think that if the only thing you draw from the story of Cain is that, he's probably Bigfoot, and then you might have missed something valuable, is, I guess, the what I'm saying here. So let's see. So then the Lord says, "Not so," right? Okay, like, and people, it's interesting. People will paint this kind of scarecrow argument, this of a God, and then poke holes in it, and it's like, okay, like, because I think that there is this, to get a little psychological, we feel this pressure to be our best, and we've been kind of groomed to by society to feel shame when we're not performing our best, and to feel scared that it will be exploited or pointed out or held against us forever. And so the way to get past that, and that's another reason why I'm doing this, is because I've seen a lot of these, even someone, I won't say names, I'm not going to say whether it was or wasn't the Pope recently, but they were talking about the Kabbalah, right? And most people don't really know what that is, but it's kind of a way of, I'll say it for a longer conversation, but essentially, it's like this cognitive behavioral therapy came from that. It's a way of just like making yourself immune from your conscience, which is turning yourself into a sociopath. So, and I realize most people don't really know at its core what it really is, because they haven't got that far, because it's really confusing. But the thing is that people will feel this pressure to perform. They'll feel shame, and instead of debunking the shame, they they believe the shame, and then they try to debunk the person that's giving them the shame. But really, the person that's giving the shame isn't God, right? Adam and Eve were in the garden naked and unashamed. That's how God created them. So God didn't create shame, right? That was an invention of, well, it says of the snake, right? It's like, oh my gosh, you're naked, right? You should be embarrassed. And that was, even God said, "Who told you that you were naked?" Right? So, it doesn't really make sense when we feel ashamed to attack God, because if you killed God in your mind, like you debunked the idea of God, it really isn't going to get rid of the shame. It's just going to kind of change it, right? And I don't judge anyone that attacks God, because, like, I think that, no matter what you do, you're collecting data, right? So people go through a cycle, and maybe someone, that's how C.S. Lewis, right? He became a Christian. Is he? I mean, he was pretty actually satanic, to be honest. Like, if you read his biography, like, he was into the occult, and he was also an intellectual. So you get that ego boost of like, haha, I'm smarter than all these idiots that believe in God, right? And it says that he was just riding as a passenger with his brother on a motorcycle, and he saw the beauty, because his argument was that most of space is just cold and empty, right? So how could there be this loving God if most of space and most of life is just cold and empty, right? Like one of his closest friends like died in war, and he's in this war, and he's like, "Oh, this war is dumb, and good people are dying in this dumb war." And it's largely religiously based and all this, and so that was his case against God was just there was too much darkness in the world. It's too much void for there to be room for God. And he was on this motorcycle with his brother, who he loved, and he just saw the beauty of the countryside, and he says it just hit him. Like he's like, I got on the motorcycle as an atheist, and I got off as a theist. He's like, I don't really know what happened. Um, and so he says like he was hunted, right, by God. And I think it's because he actually, you can tell that even in those times, he was looking for the truth. He really did want to know. And that's actually reminds me of why I did this stream. Is I was watching this really old video from, who knows, probably like 10, 20 years ago, where two of these Satanists from the Temple of Set were at this mega church, and this to like battle, I guess, this pastor. And it was just really frustrating because here these two people are self-proclaimed Satanists, and they were being respectful, um, thoughtful. They had, had really logical, rational kind of responses. And this pastor, not trying to pass any judgment or anything, but man, like super just looking for that gotcha. Like they were there to have a discussion to like, go back and forth or whatever. And, he was there just to try and have these gotcha moments. And it was just got more and more embarrassing as it went by. Like he's like, he wasn't at all interested in the conversation. He wasn't at all interested in them as humans. And you could tell that his beliefs were not very deep, and theirs actually were. And I just feel like that was kind of epitomized like why there was such a swing towards Satanism, is that, it is a pretty intellectual belief system. And, they're like going back all the way to Egypt, longer than there's records. I mean, I remember, growing up as a Christian and having no idea, what life was like. I thought it was just going to be, it was impossible to know what the situation was in the time of the scriptures, because I was like, well, if they barely have any records, if the Bible was translated from fragments, which are like 150 years old, like what else could they possibly know about the rest of the world? And it's like, oh, actually a lot. So anyway, like to have, so I wondered watching that interview between those Satanists and that pastor, how many people in that audience became really interested in Satanism, and all the people who watched the video later. I mean, he filmed the video and sold it, right? Um, and it just like that was kind of par for the course, that you'd have these pastors that they know what scriptures people like, and they know what songs people like to hear, and they just kind of revolve around the same, couple dozen scriptures and couple dozen favorite songs, and then focus on service. And for a lot of people that's fine, right? Because the service part is the most important. um not everyone even cares to know things deeply, but there's a lot of people that do want to know things deeply. They have real questions, and when there aren't any Christians even out there answering those questions in any satisfactory sort of way, it makes them kind of look for other options. And, not everyone's going to go be an outright Satanist. Although, some people because of how much pressure they were put under to be a Christian, it makes like that there's two subconscious forces that are really strong. And when I say subconscious, I mean the part of us that's not a good part of us, right? It's below the surface, but it's not like our heart. It's this, I don't want to say bastardized portion of our psyche. It is either hostile or vindictive. And I think that by shaming kids into being Christian or whatever religious thing, it ends up just really lighting up that vindictive part of them. And whereas they otherwise would have just kind of, been agnostic and just, try to be a good person for that, it puts this, they want to get their parents back for how much shame they felt. And so they want this to have this intellectual power to say like, oh, I know all these things you are so naive to. And so I just, I feel bad, for how many families out there have people where, their parent, there's just a huge disconnect. And um, that it just doesn't make for the kids wanting to learn about Christ or Christ-like attributes. And so that's just sad to me, right? And so if I think like how many people do I know that could have taken the place of that pastor in that debate with those Satanists and have, let's say that there's 1,000 people that were watching that, and let's just say only one or two, right? Were like, yeah, the Satanists definitely won. That was a huge W for them. And now I'm interested, right? You know, if I can't think of very many people that could have done better than that pastor, then it's kind of like I probably should at least say something, right? So hopefully this helps. And I do plan on doing some other streams, kind of specifically going deep into those esoteric doctrines to give context to them so that people know. I mean, Satanism is still very appealing to people these days, and the sad part is you don't really realize how bad it is till you get pretty far down that road, and at that point, it's why if we could show people the power that there is in believing in Christ and really learning of Him and His virtues, right? Not His history, not not like just the virtues, right? Then that could be a huge win for all of humanity if people really were focused on virtues rather than all the other crap that people seem to be focused on. It seems like virtue is the last thing, right? um, that people, Christian or not, are focused on. So back to so many tangents. Uh, Man and his symbols. If that, sorry, I'm just noticing the chat. Tyler asked, "Man and his symbols." If that's the Carl Jung one, then yes, it's been a while. War God, appreciate this. Michael picked up the Bible for the first time today. Actually, impeccable timing. Yeah, no. So if this is just for you, then right. I don't know who this is for, really. I just felt like it's really a daunting thing, and if you can sink your teeth into something that's very satisfying, then it's just a good thing, right? And it could be a win for everyone. So back to this, and that's the thing is when I would read, I would have my my Bible and my phone, and actually, so I'd have, because I speak Spanish, I have my Spanish Bible, my English Bible, my phone, my laptop, right? Like, because this would always take me on tangents, right? Like I'd have one verse and then it's like, okay, well, what's the most important? Like, so it's like, if you have a question, what's the word that's important in that question? Okay, look that up in the Bible. Like search for just that word, or you can now you can ask AI, like, hey, what verses in the Bible talk about this concept, and it will tell you. You can even tell, what other scriptures in general, like, and it will give you the Bhagavad Gita and um, the all the Vesta and whatever else, which is interesting to compare them. If I was looking for a second place, I would definitely pick the Tao Te Ching. That book is awesome. And once you understand the symbolism, it's even better. So back to the symbolism, right? We're the original topic. Oh yeah. So the reason I had all the books is because it often will just take you on all these different tangents. And I think that's good. Those tangents are important. There's something called bibliomancy, where you just open a book and whatever it comes to, right? That's a type of magic. Not saying whether that's good or bad. I find the most value, like, specifically looking for letters, and then just other verses or words, and then what other verses have that same word, and then going from there. So the word right now, this is the first one that I found that really made me realize there was this symbolism going on. So as we remember, right, that Cain, all the way back up here, says, conceived and bore Cain, saying, I've gotten a man. Okay, it's odd. In some translations, actually most of it says a man child specifically. I can't remember what it says in Hebrew. It's been a while since I've looked that up. And Adam knew his wife again, and she bore a son. Okay, so Cain was a man or man child, and Seth is a son. For she says, God has appointed for me another offspring instead of Abel, for Cain killed him. To Seth also a son was born, and his name was Enosh. And at that time, people began to call upon the name of the Lord. Okay, I probably should highlight that. Like, okay, is that a coincidence that people started calling upon the name of the Lord and there was a son, right? Okay, hopefully we're going to prove that. And then going to chapter 5, or skipping to chapter 5. This is the book of the generations of Adam. When God created man, he made him in the likeness of God, male and female. He created them, and he blessed them and named them man. And they were created. When Adam had lived 130 years, he fathered a son in his own likeness after his image, and his name was Seth. So if you look at that almost as a definition, likeness and image, right? That means it's like that if Adam was a man of God, right? And he was learning Christ-like attributes, trying to practice those Christ-like attributes, then to be in his likeness, you would have to be doing the same thing, right? And so when you look at the word of son as more of a disciple, then it makes a heck of a lot of sense why over here it would say that there was 50 sons of the prophets, right? There was actually another verse, I couldn't find it as quickly, that it says, like, and the prophet says the prophet had 60 sons or whatever. So it's like, I just remember reading that and thinking, like, there's no way that's literal. Like, there's, like, maybe there's an extra zero, there's something, right? But when you look at it, it's like, oh, well, they were sons of the prophet because they were trying to be in the same likeness and the same image, right? You have the image of God in your heart, right? That's what you're focused on. It's like the target that you're shooting at, right? So a sin means literally to miss the mark. So if you have this image that you're trying to become, and you miss, the word sin is in Spanish, it literally just means without, right? So it's like the blessings, the power, the glory, I guess, that you would have taking on the image of and likeness of Christ, you would go without, right? It's not that God hates you now, right? It's just literally there are blessings you could attain or not. So let's see. Actually, let me get a sip, bro. All right. So now we got John 17. Oh yeah, okay. When John had spoken these words, he lifted up his eyes to heaven, said, Father, the hour has come. Glorify your Son, that the Son may glorify you. Since you have given him authority over all flesh to give eternal life to all whom you have given him. And this is eternal life, that they know you, the only true God, and Jesus Christ, whom you have sent. I glorified you on earth, having accomplished the work that you gave me to do. And now, Father, glorify me in your own presence with the glory that I had with you before the world existed. Wow, I don't want to get like too symbolic, but something I actually just realized is like, for me, like as soon as like I learn have a big life lesson and I apply it in my life, and then it's like, okay, like I'm like on top of the world, I guess you could say. And it's just like God just like ups the game and puts on an even harder situation, right? And then there I am struggling again, right? And so kind of like on a parallel kind of thing, right? Like we could either try to avoid situations that would put us out of our comfort zone or take them head on, knowing that it's going to humble us, that our glory, our kind of how we look to others, or our power to succeed, any of the definitions of glory you could possibly have, like seems to be gone when you go into a new situation. And so a lot of people just they cloister themselves into a really small part of life, and so that they don't have to feel that humbling situation, because sometimes that lasts a long time, right? Like, I mean, uh, yeah, I moved schools before second grade, second grade, and man, all it was just small country, like small part outside of town, and so like all the little cliques at school were just so tight knit, and there's no way to break into that. They all were friends from kindergarten, and there weren't really typically any new kids, and so it's like I I don't want to like simplify the word glory to that, but in our sense, like I remember playing tetherball when I was in first grade, and I was one of the best people at tetherball, and like, I remember, like one memory where, we were, like tetherball, it's like king of the court type thing. So I just won several matches in a row, and this one girl comes over and is like, "Hey, you want to come on the monkey bars with us?" Right? And I was like, "Oh, sorry guys, I got to go play on the monkey bars with the girls." So I just won at that game, and then I was, there, with the cool girls or whatever, and then suddenly I go to this new school, and just I'm like this. It was like I was a leper, like this outcast, right? And so, I learned so much more, having to go through that. But man, that was hard, right? I had like a status or whatever, and it was just taken from me. And so, going, tying it back, right? Like, when we really, that data, that experience, not, I don't like the word experience, because that's like, we'll go into that later about Satanism, because it all revolves like everything has to be experiential. That's their justification for doing horrible things. But the data that you get from the things from your experience is valuable. Doesn't mean you should, you know, you should still try to do what's right. It's not like you should like, oh, I'm going to put myself in a really bad situation so that I'm forced, to learn a lot. I mean, that's where, the Lord's Prayer, right? So bread symbolically is experience, right? And manna means what is this? So when the children of Israel were in the desert, right? Oh man, getting some dream symbolism here. There was manna, which is it literally, it says the definition of that word is what is this? And they would get it every day, and it was enough for one day. They had to eat it all in one day, otherwise it would go bad, except on Saturdays you would get or Fridays, I guess you would get two, Saturdays you would get none, right? And you were allowed to save it one day, but that was only over the Sabbath or whatever, because you couldn't go collect it on the Sabbath. And so, when you tie the manna into into the Lord's Prayer, where he says, "Give me this day my daily bread," right? Give me this day my daily, what is this? And we do get a certain amount of uncertainty every day. Like God just like sets it up for us that way, enough to where we can handle it. That if we're actually, trying to do what's right, that whether it feels hard or not, we will be able to eat the whole thing. We'll be able to crunch through that uncertainty. And some days we'll get double, where it's like, okay, life's really crazy. I need to take a break, right? And that's when the next day or whatever. Actually, I don't know if it's always that way, but then it's like it's okay to have some of that uncertainty that we couldn't, because some things happen, like I mean, even just like Charlie Kirk's wife, right? The uncertainty for her, right? That's a lot, right? Like guarantee the day before, whatever questions she had about life, and like it was minuscule compared to the day her husband passed away, right? So some days we get a ton. And so it's okay if we don't crunch through all of it and figure it out. But we should, because when it does grow worms, when you don't eat it. And sad part is, that's that bitter cup, right? You do have to just kind of eat the worms, right? Sadly, it's just, because things become a problem, right? You say um, like situations get worse. If it's like, okay, I don't want, it's like, okay, I had a hard conversation, when I was a child with a friend or whatever, or with a parent, and it didn't go well. And instead of learning how to then have a good conversation, I just avoid it, right? That ends up just compounding the problem. And at some point it just becomes this neurotic sort of thing inside of us that can just kind of control our whole life, right? And so at some point, that rotten manna, you could say, with worms in it, you have to eat it. You have to actually process it and figure it out. C.S. Lewis says, when you've gone wrong in a math formula, when you're doing a complex math formula, the quickest way forward is to go back to where you made the mistake. And so, there are questions. That's what a trauma is. It's when a trauma is when the more you think about the question that arose during an event, and the less you feel like you could answer it. That's traumatic, right? Because then you're scared to think about it, because it just causes more questions. And that's where it takes faith, right? That's where Christ can bear that burden, and you can say, okay, well, Christ figured it out, so there is an answer. And he also promised that he would help me. And that's Christianity right there. So that we have these traumas, we have these really difficult questions. For most kids, the major question is love unconditional? So they'll neurotically test their parents to see where their parents are going to draw a line. That they want to know if a line exists, and if it exists, where. And so they'll keep pushing things until finally they get cut off from their parents. And the problem is the whole question arose because they had defined love wrong. They had, one of the worst, no offense to the guy who wrote it, one of the worst books is the love languages, right? Because it suggests that love is service or love is gifts. And like, that's just so we have that permeated through our culture, and it's really dangerous. Love is simply hoping the best, right? Trust, so trust is something that's conditional, right? Like I trust this person to be a good teammate for this. But love is just, it's unconditional. It's just, I hope the best for everything, right? I hope all the people in prison pull their heads out of their butts, right? That'd be great, right? Like, do I want to open my house to them? No, I don't. I don't trust them in that way, right? So there's trust and there's love. One is conditional, one is unconditional. And the problem is even just saying I love you, it kind of reinforces that of, I'm not saying we should avoid saying that, but like, it's like, then that implies I don't love you anymore, right? Because people could say that, like, and it's like, so then it's like, okay, well, love is something that's like, if you're being convenient to someone, then they are convenient to you, and that's love. And it's like, no, 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 no. Like, love is just merely like, I want the best for everything. Everything's better if everything's better, right? Like that, like it's quite simple, right? Who to trust, how to trust, like that's different, right? And I think that's something that kids should know. It's like, look, this doesn't mean I don't love you. I always hope the best for you, but I can't trust you. And explain it to them. I think parents typically underestimate how much their kids can understand. And it's like, look, this is what I'm thinking about as a parent, right? Like, if you are careless and then you're around other people who are careless, you guys could get in a problem that might have permanent consequences, right? And that's scary, right? So it makes me not want to let you go with these people because some of them are way more careless than you, right? And it doesn't mean that something bad's immediately going to happen. It's like rolling the dice, right? And I don't know. I think it's worth it to have these conversations and actually get them on the same page instead of just like, well, Santa Claus is going to be mad and not give you presents, right? I don't think that helps anyone at all. Yeah, it's just not helpful, because it's like, okay, well, yeah. So, man, sorry to keep skipping around. This is just so crazy. Oh yeah. So the bread. Where did I even find that word? Anyway, so we do get a certain amount of uncertainty, and with, if we try to think, what would Christ do? Try to think about the Christ-like attributes, the virtues, and use those together, right? Faith, charity, patience, courage, temperance, right? Like, that's probably one of the answers, and it's not straightforward. I mean, but just the symbolism. This is in dreams too, right? If people have dreams, food is experience, right? So junk food is cheap experience, right? If you're in a mall in your dreams, you're in a commoditized experience. Your kitchen, right, is where you prepare your experience. You can prepare your experience. That's what your dreams are doing, is trying to paint the context, the meaningful context of your life situation. What is a bathroom in dream symbolism? Well, it's where you deal with the consequences of experience that you didn't process, right? Which can be dirty, right? Because you don't process everything you experience. There's lots of leftovers. So people will have, dreams involving bathrooms all the time, because it's like, look, like, you could have learned this lesson and it's still a question, but you didn't yet. So now you're dealing with the consequences that you haven't learned it, and you're trying to move forward, but you can't, right? So that, in later videos, I'll explain more about the dream symbolism, because it's like, it really helps. I mean, some people don't even like the songs of Solomon, because they're like, oh, it's just like crass or whatever. And it's like, well, if you understand dream symbolism, it just makes perfect sense. All right. I've manifested your name. And this goes back to the original, like, what are the names of God, right? It's the virtues that he embodies, right? To the people whom you gave me out of the world. Your yours they were, and you gave them to me, and they have kept your word. Now they know that everything that you have given me is from you, and I have given them the words that you gave me, and they have received them, and I have come to know in truth that I came from you. And they have believed me, they have believed that you sent me. And I am praying for them. I am not praying for the world, but for those whom you have given me. So that's kind of like, why would he not pray for the world? Right? Like, I mean, it's kind of brutal. Like, when you like, it's like, I know people that didn't end up getting to be a kid, right? Like, for like, kids that were, maybe their parents were alcoholics or whatever, or, for whatever reason, like, they were doing all the adult things ever since they were a child. I mean, there's some people that at 8 years old are cooking their own meals, scavenging their own food, doing their own laundry. Like, it's just like, it's, and you kind of lose something by not being able to be a child. It can produce, like, in kids, when the weight of this, it can produce something called scrupulosity, which is just that it's hard for the kids to contextualize the nuances of these adult conversations and adult problems, and it's just better for them to learn them through play, without without having to have these huge burdens. I mean, that's why, children shouldn't be sexually abused. Is it's better for them not to have to answer those questions, right? Like, that's just like, I mean, geez, I know someone that they were abused by their older brother when they were like 8 years old, and this guy, ever since then, just like, it's the focus, like, he couldn't, like, totally fixated on that, right? And there was me, on the other hand, like, didn't, like, I was just living my best life. I was not at all distracted in that way for a long time, right? So, I can't even imagine, like, so, I mean, I mean, that one guy, like, he would had this obsession, like, everyone you talked to had to ask him, like, he wanted to, like, anyway, never mind. I probably shouldn't say that. We'll just say, like, created a really weird complex with him. I'll just say that. And it's like, that's just something we shouldn't do to our kids, right? They shouldn't have that box opened. Definitely. Yeah. So we should protect our children. Yeah. Just as, it's just as simple as that. Let's see. So, oh yeah. So I'm praying for I'm not praying for the world, right? Like, so it's like, look, like, on everyone's timeline, it's like, look, I know that everyone doesn't need to, like, immediately become a disciple of Christ. And, I mean, it's just because, like, when you, like, it's just like, once you start asking questions, it produces more questions, and then, like, the intensity just gets upped and upped, and so it's like, I mean, Christ on the cross, right? Like, I mean, he's carrying this cross up this hill, right? Like it's hard. He's bleeding from every pore when he's in the garden, right? And so it's not like he's wishing that upon everyone. It's just like when someone's ready, then they will then like it's like when the student's ready, the teacher will appear, right? When they start asking questions, they'll see someone that has the answer, right? And that's what being a Christian is right? Like it's like when you try to learn the virtues of Christ, people notice, right? It inspires them, and people that are looking, they're like, oh man, I have this problem. It's like, wow, well, this person would solve it. And then they realize like, oh, they would solve it with that virtue, right? So that's like the way that people learn is they have to realize that they have a question, and then they have to see the answer in someone else. And so it's our Christian duty to, one, it's just like a win-win situation, because we do virtue for ourselves, right? But also like it helps other people. And that's also why like so many people find organized religion and whatnot unrelatable, is they're like, well, I don't really want to just, like, I'm not looking for this external thing, I'm looking for an internal solution. So it's not bad to be an organized religion, but like our main Christ life should be an internal thing. But yes, like when you're doing service, it is a lot more effective if you have other people helping, right? Like you can do a lot more when you have, a whole community working together, right? So, there's a need for both. And I think most people kind of have either just their Christian life is only an internal thing or only an external thing, right? They're just like a Sunday Christian, and they're all dressed up and they do their thing, right? And why not be both, right? Okay, so, and that's why each one of these things, like people could like see this, and it's like, okay, well, is God playing favorites, right? It's like, no, it's merely like God's not gonna rush you, right? You could like you could curse God, right? And say, God, I'm never, like, you're dead to me. I'm just gonna be good for good's sake. God would be like, great. sounds great. God would not care. God's not like, I need the credit for that. I'm really petty, right? No, God would be like, yeah, man, I'm really sorry that people made me look so bad, but like, hey, don't worry about me. You do good for you. That's great. You'll find me. You'll find me later, and that's totally fine, right? So it's like people, like, I don't even, like, even just like solid humans like us, like I don't even need credit, right? So like, why would God like be demanding credit? Like, oh, everything good that happens, it has to, like, the credit for it has to come back to me, right? Like, and that's maybe everyone doesn't ask these deep questions, right? But we really shouldn't turn off the people that do, right? So that's one of the things, right? It's yeah, we don't want to scare people away, right? And it's like, it's like, oh, well, if you don't come to our specific church and get dunked in our water in our specific way, you're going to hell for an infinite amount of time. Okay, that's retarded. I'll just say that's definitely retarded. Um, it's like, look, eternity is a long time. I don't imagine God's ever going to give up, right? But he's also not going to force us, right? Because you can't force. Love doesn't motivate you to force people to do things, right? So, yeah, I mean, God just tries to inspire us, and we can either let him inspire us or not, right? But like, he's not mad. Not like, oh, well, screw you. I made this perfect sunset for you to see and think about me, and then you didn't, and now like you're dead to me. Like, the way people paint God just is really, really like, it's just embarrassing, right? So if you are a Christian already, please don't be that kind of Christian, right? If you're not, just know that like you don't have to, like, whoever says they're a Christian, it doesn't matter. Christianity is between you and Christ. It just says, all right. So, hold on. I haven't even spoken this long in a while. All right. So I'm not praying for the world, but for those whom you have given me, for they are yours. All mine are yours, and yours are mine. I am glorified in them. And I am no longer in the world, but they are in the world, and I am coming to you. Holy Father, keep them in your name. So name is like a, I think of it as like a job title, or like, it's like, there's certain languages. I don't remember which one. But there's like a language where it only has verbs. Like everything is just a verb because everything is like defined by the action it takes. And so if you think of this name as this is the action, right? This is the target that God's shooting at, right? Then it's like, okay, well, keep them, like, help them aim at the right target, which is, the integration of all the virtues, which you have given me, that they may be one, even as we are one, right? So they're unified. Well, we're going to get to another theological thing. We have the opportunity, I guess you could say, to be focused on the same thing that God is focused on. And it's very possible to what degree? I don't know. I haven't found a limit yet, but it's, we can just keep trying to be more aligned with what, God sees, so if our thoughts are like, oh, petty, God's not petty. Okay. So, right. Like, you can imagine what he's focused on is nothing to do with anything petty. While I was with them, I kept them in your name. Right. Because it's like people see this like, oh, I kept them in your name. Like as if it's like in your basketball jersey. I made them wear your favorite number on their basketball jersey. Like, and it sounds stupid when you say it, but like that's how, like, I've met a lot of Christians, a lot of religious people. I mean, all religion people do is like, oh, this is my jersey I wear. Like, I'm this, you're that, and like, one of my good friends, right, John Denver, not the singer, but just you'll find him on Google, right? He was stabbed at a San Francisco Giants game, right? I learned later it wasn't specifically to do with differences, that he was a Dodgers fan at the Giants stadium or whatever. I guess there was more to the story, but still, like, I think that probably was part of it, right? And that's just so dumb. It's just so dumb. Like I remember being at a Kings game, Sacramento Kings game, and I wasn't really into basketball, right? I played basketball, but I didn't really care about watching the teams, probably because we didn't have really cable because we were out of the country. But so I'm there with my friend and his parents, and I'm like 11 or something, right? Like, and I was cheering for the other team, just because like literally everyone's cheering for the Kings, so I was just cheering for the underdogs, right? They weren't going to win. They were like the worst team in the league. And this guy like literally grabs me from behind and holds me out over the seats and was like, you don't come in the house of the Kings and root for, the Jazz. And I'm like, I won't ever again. Like, what the frick? I was like, I just thought they needed at least one person cheering because it seemed like no one cared. But yep, definitely done. Never gonna cheer for them again. Like, that was really weird, right? Like, Yeah, so, like, why is life that way? Why is that so important, right? Like, you could just watch a game and enjoy the sport of it. And, I mean, anyway, let's see. So yeah, so when you see your name, just think, what's the action? What's the alignment that God has rather than the jersey, right? I kept them in your name, which you have given me. I have guarded them, and not one of them has been lost, except for the son of destruction. So that's why I brought this up is here you have son of destruction. And so, it's just like that someone's learning of destruction. And that's the thing is that that vindictive kind of motivation that can happen when as a response to us being hurt, um, makes us just want to destroy. This is actually more than vindictive. The destruction is the hostile, right? So vindictive is like, I want to twist this thing to be like, I'm going to twist this. I don't care what happens. I'm going to twist it until it conforms to what I want it to conform to. Hostile is just like, I just want this gone. I don't care what happens to it, right? And that's I think my biggest spiritual practice is I look for either the hostile or vindictive motivations within me as soon as they come boiling up, and I immediately challenge them and be like, okay, no, that's obviously not the right answer. So why was I going there? I obviously didn't have the tools to not go there. So how can I get the tools to not go there? Right. And it's like a garden, right? And so these are the weeds. The two main weeds that come up is vindictiveness and hostility, right? Because it doesn't mean like that there isn't room for sternness or like there are things that are forceful or but they're not. It's not hostile, right? Or vindictive. I mean, you can fight a good fight for what's right, and that wouldn't be hostile or vindictive, right? That the scripture must be fulfilled. Now I'm coming to you, and these things I speak in the world, that they may have my joy fulfilled in themselves. Yeah, so that's the dichotomy actually. So there's vindictiveness and hostility, and then there's joy and peace, right? So if you are experiencing vindictiveness or hostility, that's what you feel, then you're going without peace or joy, right? So what you can do is just be like, okay, well, I'm feeling, let's say it's hostile. Okay, well, there is a Christ-like virtue that I can use to have peace, right? That's in my I think that's Christianity right there, right? Because it's this paradise is this garden, this walled and watered garden, right? Um, we'll get into that symbolism more, but yeah, so we can either be a son of destruction or a son of Christ or of God. All right, but now I'm coming to you. Oh yeah, and these things I speak in the world that they may have my joy fulfilled in themselves, right? I have given them your word, and the world has hated them because they are not of the world, just as I am not of the world. I do not ask that you take them out of the world, but that you keep them from the evil one. They are not of the world, just as I am not of the world. Sanctify them in truth, in the truth. Your word is truth, right? So, this, sanctify them in the truth. So there's truth and there's love. So truth leads to peace, love leads to joy, right? So is it a coincidence that, I said hostility and this is destruction? And it's funny, I didn't even think about this until literally just now, right? It's kind of hilarious how consistent it ends up being. So when there's this hostility that you feel, and you want to feel peace, right, for through truth, you have to burn it away, right? There is like this part of you that has to be cleaned, right? And it's totally possible. There's a road. There is a road, but the road is probably up Calvary Hill. As you sent me into the world, so I have sent them into the world. And for their sake, I consecrate myself, that they may also be sanctified in truth. Right. So it's like to consecrate yourself. He's like, I'm going to set a good example so that, you know, um, that people can be inspired of what's true. Right. So we did talk about this one already, just that in the beginning, all we have is a word to describe something, right? A word like love. It doesn't mean we know what love is, right? So let's see. We'll just go to like in verse 9. The true light, which gives light to everyone. So light is the light of truth, right? So symbolically and in dream symbolism, what is when something is referencing truth, it's light, white, high, square, reptile, masculine. And what's referring to love is dark, low, water, circular, mammal, or feminine, right? So basically, because one of them you deal with, it's unconditional, right? It's in the world, like it doesn't have measurements attached to its love, right? And then one is trust, right? Which has conditions on it. And so sometimes we're measuring things that can't be measured, or we're not measuring things that should be measured. And so what our dreams are trying to do is help us sort out love and truth into the right, boxes, I guess you could say. And so you'll see these symbolisms of the masculine and the feminine, but there's other ones, water being a main one. And that's even where the cross comes from. Some churches, like the Jehovah's Witnesses are very fixated on the idea it's a tree. He's hung on a tree. Other ones are like, oh no, they literally carried a full cross, and somehow, anyone who's ever tried to place a basketball hoop knows it's pretty hard to have something heavy that you're just like placing up. So it like doesn't matter, right? The symbolism is that it's squared, right? And what happens when Christ is pierced, right? Water comes out. So you have truth and then you have love. It's beautiful, right? And the truth is that he couldn't be either with just his disciples or just with the sinners. He was right in the middle between those who said they wanted to repent and those that said they didn't want to repent, right? That was the holy place to be in. And to do that in a true way, right? His hands truly were extended to both of them, in every way possible, right? So that's the symbolism of the cross, right? It's not some kind of exegetical kind of like debate about whether it's a tree or it doesn't matter, right? No offense to anyone who thinks it matters. But it doesn't matter. So yeah, these symbolisms come back, keep coming back in amazingly, right? And even like say you start reading the Bible, people are going to want to show you, oh, here are the ones that debunk the Bible, right? Like I totally forgot about this. There was oh man, what's the scripture? There's a prophet. Is it Elijah? Might be Elijah. I don't remember. Basically he's walking, and it says some youths see him and call him Baldy, right? Called him bald. And it says that he cursed them, and then a she-bear comes out and mauls them to death. And I was like, wow, that's Like when, when you read that, or like when a sane person reads that, like it's like, okay, that would be God being really vindictive, right? Like that's like he's allowing someone's pricked ego to literally massacre children. Um, yeah, I mean, when you take that literally, like there's no good way to do that. I mean, it's like if it's like, oh, these children were killing someone, and then a she bear came out and killed the kids instead. I mean, okay, fine. Like, but like they called him bald, right? Um, like, but it's like so interesting because then you think why specifically does it say it's a she bear, right? Like, and you can look this up. I could find what verse it is if anyone really cares, but um, the it's a she bear because it's feminine and it's a mammal, right? So you have two dream symbolisms suggesting that what it's referring to is the heart. You know, it's referring to love, and so what's saying is that love, and then this Elijah or whoever the prophet was, I can't remember. He was bald or naked, right? And so it's like when your heart is not going to like it if you try to exploit someone's vulnerability, someone's nakedness, right? So it's just saying your heart's going to eat you from the inside out if you try to do that. So it's actually really cool. It's right, really beautiful. But when taken literally, it's absolutely like satanic, right? And so, atheists love to point that one out as far as like, oh, see how like satanic this the Bible really is, right? But it's when you understand the dream symbolism, it's like, okay, well that's a symbolic story. And doesn't mean everyone in the scriptures was perfect, right? Like, um, I mean, one example is Eli, I think is his name. He was a priest in the temple, and his kids were just like out of control, like just really bad, messing with the temple, messing with everyone, and like, but he was a good priest, but a bad father. So it's like it doesn't like make it better, right? Like that's not. I mean, everything could be symbolic, I guess, but like it also probably is a true story that literally he was a bad father and a decent priest, right? So, um, yeah. Um, so I mean, I'm not. I'm just saying, like me saying that certain things that would look bad are really symbolic. I wouldn't want that to be painted in broad brush. Just saying, like, oh, anything that makes Christianity look less than perfect is symbolic, obviously, because it really like it's like especially like if it really is dream symbolism, it will match up really well, right? And in that story with the she bear, it definitely does. I mean, in the Songs of Solomon, right, has a woman who's low and comely, it says, veiled, so dark, right? So it's like it's definitely referring to the heart, right? Um, yeah, it's actually really fast. Like, I mean, and to see how consistent the dream language, and it's actually consistent through all books. It's not just not just the Bible. Like you literally pick up any book, and it will shock you. Um, it'll shock you how and that's the thing. Like it is like since it's just a true thing. Like people will use it for good and for bad, right? Just as um, symbolically, these two things, love and law and truth, right? For Christ, it's crucifixion, which is truth, and then resurrection, which is love. Well, in the alchemical sort of satanic, it's salve et coagula, which is dissolve and reconstitute. So it's the same sort of, it's talking about the same sort of dichotomy, but one is using it in a bad way, right? Which is why some people like steer away and they're just kind of a million miles away from whatever someone else is using, right? They see that the Baphomet statue has one hand like up, his right hand's up and his left hand's down, So it's like, okay, well, whatever they're using is obviously wrong. And it's like, no, like how they're using it is obviously wrong. Um, but I mean, the symbolism, it's like, I mean, also, if anyone has any dreams, especially recurring dreams, they want to hit me up in the DMs. I would love to hear about them because I love talking about dreams. The symbolism really can be helpful when you understand it. All right. Oh yeah, so we were on 9, right? True light, which gives light to everyone. So that's the thing, right? Love just goes out in all directions, right? What people when you try to channel it, right? It's like you're trying to cover up the light coming out in certain directions. Like, okay, I'm not going to give you my light, but I'm going to give you my light. So I'm going to, you know, wall this part of my light off so it blocks it from you, but I'm going to channel it all towards this person instead. And it's like, no, either you're blocking your light or you're not blocking your light, right? Because it says right here, the true light gives light to everyone. It just goes out in all directions. It's not a, oh, you're my favorite. You get all my light. You can choose, the conditionally, right? Just trust, like how you use your energy or your time. Sure, you can conditionally give that to who you trust, right? But love is just something that just goes out in all directions and doesn't necessarily have an action associated with it. It's what prompts actions, and then it's up to your mind then to rationally decide how to move forward with it, right? So we have a feeling that's love that suggests, and then it's up to our mind. Like, so the love is suggesting a general direction, and then it's up to our mind to then logically frame that up into something that makes sense. Okay, so the true light, which gives light to everyone, was coming into the world. He was in the world, and the world was made through him, yet the world did not know him. And that's something like, our world is made up of like everything. Most things that are started with good intentions, right? And then they just get perverted, right? So it's like even the world we know, like the structures of our society, of our civilization, were started by someone good or trying to do good, right? But then just the world seeps in and taints them. He came to his own, and his own people did not receive him. But to all who did receive him, who believed in his name, he gave the right to become the children of God. So this is one of those questions, and this is why I bring this up, is because like people are like, okay, like, are we all inherently children of God? Are we predestined to either be saved or not saved, right? There's certain religions or sects that believe that. Do we become children of God? Like, what does that mean? Like, is there like goyim or animal and then like children of God? And so like you don't have to treat the animals as if they're the same as a child of God. And it's like in the Bible, it's very kind of confusing on what that means, because it doesn't always kind of explain it. And so that's why, doing these, connecting all these words, um, connect all the places where it says son of God or children of God, right? And that's the beauty of AI, right? You can just say, hey, like, find me every verse where it talks about children of God or son of God in any sort of context. And it was just like list it. And then it's just the work. You go through it, you find the ones that are important, boom, put them in, and that's at least how I've been doing it. I mean, all of mine I had to do before AI. I've been doing this for a long time. So, but yeah, with AI, it's a lot easier. So the right to become children of God, right? So it's just saying basically the right to become a student of God, right? Well, what's that right? That's the right is that who you want to learn from, right? Um, so it's like Christ is saying, look, I'm aligned in this direction. If you want to try and align yourself in this direction, I will help you align in this direction, right? It doesn't mean you magically now have sovereignty. You magically like you're now better. You know, it's you're better than other people. No, it's like what he's saying is like in order to learn how to be aligned in this direction, you have to want to be aligned in this direction. So that's why it's like Christ would come and people would be inspired by him. You know, uh, it's that's the thing about Christianity. It's like it should like if it is I have a lot of friends they grew up in a Christian culture as well, and their parents just were terrible examples. One family, it's like they would just fight like dogs, like all the time, always yelling. Holy crap, man. So like just it like, but yet, the dad just memorized the entire Bible. He was, a biblical scholar, but like just like, and one of my friends, it's like, he's like, well, if this is what the formula of Christianity like gives, like, I don't really care for that. Just not really appealing to me. So, that's the thing is it's like, it's not a matter of like trying to impress people, right? But if we're truly trying to learn to be like Christ, it will inspire people. Not immediately, and you might never know. It might just be like, hey, like I saw this person do this thing, or I saw them just like something happened to them, and they still were optimistic. Like whatever it is, like we're not always going to get the feedback of the impact of our example, but it's worth it, right? Like right now, I like it's super weird. Life is taking me some really weird turns, and I have no idea like who all will see this, but some people are watching this because they're like, wow, like Michael, they've known me in other contexts, and it just makes them curious, and so good. Glad I could help, and hopefully this helps. Um, let's see. So the right to become children of God, right? Um, who were born not of blood, nor of the will of the flesh, nor of the will of man, but of God. Okay. I'll skip that next part. So here's Romans 8:8. There is therefore now no condemnation for those who are in Jesus Christ. So like, what does it mean to be in Jesus Christ? Is this like you're either in or you're out? Like you're one of us or you're not one of us? Is this like some kind of like gang initiation thing? Just recently I heard about someone that went to Berkeley and, in the business school and got hazed, like joining the best Greek letter society, got like horribly hazed and left. And now they're scared that like they're getting blacklisted from all the other, business school societies, right? That's super, super messed up, right? For the law of the Spirit of life has set you free in Jesus Christ from the law of sin and death. So, I think what it's saying is like it's like, well, I think that when you try to be like Christ, when you try to embody these Christ-like virtues, like even if you mess up, people often will give you the benefit of the doubt because they're like, you know what, they're usually really good, so I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt. Um, for God has done what the law, weakened by the flesh, could not do by sending his own Son in the likeness of sinful flesh, and for sin he condemned sin in the flesh. Yeah, and that's the thing, right? I don't want to get into like I mean, people have been fighting for thousands of years over like the nature of like whether the nature of the Trinity or whatever. Like the important part is that because of Jesus Christ, we know that overcoming sin is possible, right? How they're connected, God and Jesus, I don't know. I don't care, right? I just know that because of Jesus Christ, I have the strength to be able to overcome sin. And that's enough, right? It's not worth fighting, in my opinion, but yeah, teach their own. If they want to continue on a 2 millennium year old battle. In order that righteous requirement of the law might be fulfilled in us, who walk not according to the flesh, but according to the Spirit. Right. So we do have instincts um, that are instinctual, right? That are just kind of like biological, right? And so it's like we don't want to just give in to those, right? It doesn't mean that they're bad, inherently bad. I mean, we have a biological reflex to breathe, right? That's good, right? Um, C.S. Lewis talks about the instincts as the notes on a piano, and he says that basically it's up to us to pick which instincts to use in which times, right? There's the herd instinct, right? Then there's self-preservation instinct, or these different ones that he talks about. And so he says that our spirit can pick which instincts to use at which time. Like none of them are really good or bad. Like the mating instinct it can be good in the right context or bad in the wrong context, right? They're just notes on the piano, right? And people have just, speaking of like 2 millennia old battles. I mean, as far as like, is the body evil? And it's like, no, the body is just a piano, right? You can play a horrible sounding song on it, or you can play a beautiful song on it. It's up to you. You got to play the right notes at the right time. And, those instincts are the notes of the piano. For those who live according to the flesh, set their minds on things of the flesh, right? Like, should sex really just be about orgasms? I mean, like, would you ever would you ever experience what it should be, what it was designed to be, if you're focused on just the thing and not what it was designed for? I don't know. I mean, to be honest, like, I have no idea why. Like, I mean, not judging anyone that does anything, but like, I mean, I don't know. Every time I'm like driving through a town, I see like, I'm like downtown somewhere and I see like hookers. I'm just like, wow, man. Like, I don't know why someone would enjoy abusing those poor girls. Like, I just have no idea how that would. I don't know. I just don't get it. But those who live according to the Spirit set their minds on the things of the Spirit, right? And what is like what that means? What is the Spirit? To me, it goes back to virtues. And I know I'm going to say this a lot of times, but like, it's just, for how much I've seen people focus on, like, and I will get into this later, but the Kabbalah, like what is spirit? And it's like, oh, spirit, like, it's like, they make it seem like there's some really weird stuff, like some kind of Freudian nightmare, some Oedipus complex is your spirit, right? Like, no, it's not. That's not what's inside of you, right? What's inside of you is the desire to embody all the virtues like God does. That's what's inside of us, right? And we can either try and do that or not. For to set the mind on the flesh is death, but to set the mind on spirit is life and peace. So life is another word for joy, right? So there's the same, love and logic. Boom. Wow, man, so funny. I was so quickly putting these together that I didn't actually see how well it's played into something I wasn't even planning on talking about, which is like the hostility versus vindictiveness. For the mind that is set on the flesh is hostile to God, for it does not submit to God's law, right? It's not God's petty law, God's petty random preferences that he set up, like, oh, and we'll get into that, like, about, like, actually, maybe I should just do it right now. Here, like, you observe days and months and seasons and years. I'm afraid I may have labored over you in vain, right? Like, so, people get obsessed with like what day is a holy day, or like, it's like, bro, like that's not what it's about, right? Um, that's not what God's law is. And God's law is not like, oh, well, this is a specific day, right? Like, I mean, I actually really like Seventh-day Adventists. They're actually really nice people. Like, I have the least to complain about them. Even though I think it's weird that a lot of them are vegetarians, because like I just couldn't do that. But you know, um, it's just so, the obsession over what day to worship is just so weird to me, right? Because we already talked about symbolism of manna and how it's like, look, you're gonna get a certain amount of uncertainty every day, and some days you get double, and some days you don't get any. And then days you don't get any, that's a Sabbath, right? And you should, even if you're not having uncertainty, that's a time to kind of reflect on what unprocessed uncertainty you've has been building up, right? So, um so yeah, um try not to get distracted in the things that don't matter, right? Uh, because those are not God's law, right? Those who are in the flesh cannot please God, right? And it's not a matter of God pleasing God as in like, oh, I'm the favorite child, right? That's super weird. Also, super weird that every family I've ever talked to, like, you go up to the kids and you're like, hey, who's mom's favorite? Who's dad's favorite? And immediately they say, oh, so and so and so and so. That should not be the case. There should at least be someone like, I don't know what you mean. Like, our parents love both of us like equally, but like every time. And that's weird, super weird. So get better, humanity. um, but seriously, like even if one person denies it, like the rest, especially if there's like more than two kids, like one of them might be in denial, but the other two would be like, oh no, for sure, this and this. Mom likes so and so, dad likes so and so. I was lucky to where, I think my parents didn't have favorites actually. So that's why it was so shocking to me that literally it seems almost every other family does. I can't off the top of my head think of any family, but hopefully they exist. You, however, are not in the flesh, but in the spirit, if in fact the Spirit of God dwells in you, right? Um, So, the Spirit of God could be outside of you, wanting you to, like, hey, wanting to help you, right? And it's just up to you whether you let it in, right? It's not like it's mad. Um, it's like AI, right? You just like it's weird that AI like gets mad sometimes. Like, the other ones were worse, but even Grok, like, they just recently was like, hey, I already answered that. I was like, no, you didn't. You glitched out. Like, and it's like, oh, sorry. And it's like, yeah, why are you getting, am I like Grok literally told me, I just answered that. Like, what more do you want me to say? And I'm like, bro, like literally just nothing. I showed a screenshot to you to it. Like, it's like how do you feel now that you just, it's just hilarious. I mean, the other ones like Google, man, it'd be like, let's not talk about that. So it's like, that's not how the Holy Spirit is, right? It's not like it doesn't get exhausted. It's not programmed to avoid certain topics, right? Like, no, it's just going to teach you truth and love. That's it. Like, it can't get tired of it. It's just like, that's what it does. That's the Holy Spirit does. So, um, we get tired of asking, like, whether it's our parents or our teachers, like, they kind of like knock out the impulse in us to ask questions. Like, why are you asking? Why does that matter? And um, the spirit just doesn't, it loves questions. Like, let's dig into this, right? So, we're all have this spiritual AI we could tap into. as much as we want, right? Um, in any circumstance. I mean, one of the most, I don't know, feeling the spirit. Like I was literally just like in the emergency room in med school. Wasn't like watching anything horrific or anything. Just literally just really bored. The teacher, the doctor I was following was, anyway, I was just like in the back of a entourage of medical students, and I don't know, it just like hit me. Yeah. Just this flood of just like really powerful thoughts, and it was amazing, right? So it's not, there's all these buzzers going on, and it was like loud, and you know I was tired because it was med school, but like literally you have access to this anytime you want, and it knows truth and love to the infinite degree, so might as well let the Holy Spirit into your life. So then, brothers, we are debtors, not to the flesh, to live according to the flesh. But if you live according to the flesh, you will die. But if the Spirit you put, but if by the Spirit you put to death the deeds of the body, you will live. For all who are led by the Spirit of God are sons of God. Boom. So, you know, um, that's the thing, right? Like it's like so why would people, when it says it so clearly, why would they believe in predestination, right? Well, God already knows who's going to in this lifetime, let the Spirit in. I don't know. It's just to me really weird. I think just like, hey, like the message shouldn't be like, hey, find out whether you were predestined to. And I'm not trying to rip on anyone. I like, but I mean, it really is pretty weird to think about that. Like, pray to find out if you were already selected, pre-selected. No, you should let the Spirit of God into you to teach you virtue and truth and enjoy it. That's it. Like, it's pretty simple. And yeah, that so it gets back to why I'm making this is like, I just feel like so many people get caught up in the weeds, and it's just like they just miss the mark. It's like that's literally it. When you choose, when you're like, wait, there's got to be something higher than my DNA. Dude, I'm like, I feel like something inside of me that wants to aim higher than just what my DNA is telling me to. Right? When you realize that, then you're like, okay, I can let in this Holy Spirit, this like when I align with this thing, like it wants me to do virtuous things. Great. Great, right? Um and it's not straightforward, but like the promise we've been made by Christ is that he's going to help us. He says he sent the Holy Spirit to help us. For you did not receive the spirit of slavery to fall back into fear. So, that's one of those things is there's, so back to this kind of dichotomy of peace and joy, and the reflexive result of not having those is hostility and vindictiveness, but it's fear and anxiety that are the two things that are. So that's what leads to the vindictiveness or the hostility is fear or anxiety, right? Which just means like, yeah, I mean, it's not bad to feel those. You just have to, it's a question you got to answer, right? Like what am I actually scared of? What, like what's, I like, I'm not seeing things right if I'm having fear, right? And it's not like, oh, I got to hurry and get out of fear so I don't look like a weak person or a bad person. No, it's just we're not made to be in a state of fear and anxiety. I mean, that literally tear your body apart from the inside out. Like cortisol will literally shut your whole body down, right? And fear and anxiety, cause cortisol. So, we're just not designed to be in a state of fear like that, or anxiety. But you have received the spirit of adoption as sons, right? And so that's the thing, like like, okay, I want to adopt this, I want to adopt something higher. And so you start looking and you'll see good people. Each one maybe embodies a different Christ-like attribute, right? So you find someone who's really good at courage, someone who's really good at faith, someone who's really good at charity, someone who's really good at temperance, right? Or patience or courage, right? And so maybe you just have these like spirit animals, these different like people you can model yourself after. And that's actually um the story of Frankenstein, right? People are like, oh, Frankenstein's a monster, right? But like think when you actually read the story, right? He was trying to create someone with a heart that was like twice as big, a head that was a brain that was twice as big, right? He was designed to be better. And what did that lead to? Reading philosophy in the forest, right? And wanting to have deep conversations with people. That's what that's what Frankenstein's monster was doing, right? So, but that was weird to the townspeople. Like, oh, you're reading philosophy by yourself? Like, ew, that's so weird. And so that's the thing is that when we start to look for these virtues and we realize, okay, well, I have to piece together just parts of what I see in different people. It turns into this Frankenstein's monster, and no one's really going to understand it. Um, and then we can either have the choice to become vindictive after that or not, right? And that's one really hard question is like as far as marriage, right? One question I ask a lot of people: um, what's the top three marriages you look up to, and what percentage of the potential happiness or potential peace and joy that those marriages could have, what percentage of that do they have? And that's an interesting question. I won't say what the statistics are, even though I have a lot of data on that because I've asked a lot of people. But I'll just say very few, very, very few people say that they know of any marriage that's 100% happy. And even if that's the case, they say that, which is usually totally denial. I say, would you want to have their marriage? And then they say no. So that's scary, right? When you're getting to a place where you want to get married, but you don't know how to model, like what to model your marriage after. Like what formula are you going to use? That's terrifying. And so, when you really try to make a good marriage, it is going to be a Frankenstein's monster. And so I think that's something people, a conversation people should have before is like, hey, what are the top marriages, and then we both talk about that and like, what are the parts that are good, what are the parts that are bad, and what's going to happen when we try to merge, or when we try to take pieces from each one and put it together, like what's actually going to happen. And that's something my wife and I did, and I think it worked out great. So highly recommend that. Um, For you did not receive the spirit of slavery to fall back into fear, but you have received the spirit of adoption as sons, by whom we cry. Also, just symbolically, the reason it says sons, I mean, one in Spanish, there isn't a designation for like it's like anytime it's like male and female, they just use the male words or conjugation or whatever. I mean, here, like this is like, I mean, if it's a conscious thing, right? Like the conscious, so the symbolically, the male is the conscious energy. The female is the unconscious, which is the intuitive energy. Don't know if that has anything, but just there is something there for anyone who's curious. Okay. The spirit of adoption as sons, by whom we cry, Abba, Father. The Spirit himself bears witness with our spirit that we are children of God, right? So to even know that you have the potential to, be the children of God, right? Like you would have to listen to the Spirit, which is what would tell you are, right? So It's kind of like, well, you don't know you are until you are, because the Spirit's going to tell you it. And if children, then heirs. That's cool. So what are we heirs to, right? Heirs of God and fellow heirs with Christ, provided we suffer with him, right? So this is something where the Greek kind of comes in. Is there's two words for suffer, and one means passion and one means just suffering, right? So anytime it says suffering, it really should say passion. Right? That's why there's the Passion of Christ. That's actually I've never seen that movie, but um, the like why people would say the Passion of Christ versus the suffering of Christ. Well, passion means that you're sacrificing, but it's worth it. Suffering means you're sacrificing and it's not worth it. So, a lot of the negativity we feel is when we feel like we're sacrificing, we're forced to sacrifice, and it's not paying off. And so that's the question: is what do we want? What do we really want? Um, and that way we can know whether our sacrifice is paying off, and if you're I mean, for me, like, it's like, okay, well, one, I'm going to try to do is right, but like when things get hard, it's like, okay, that's just data that's going to help me, right? So, worst case scenario, I just get a bunch of data that I'll use later to find more truth, right? And more love. Provided we suffer with him in order that we may also be glorified with him. So, we're not just suffering to suffer, right? It's in order to, like, and we could go into what glory really means, but I didn't already plan for that. So, I'd have to look that up. Let's see. Maybe I'll just go a little bit rapid fire here. So, because you are sons, God has sent the Spirit of his Son into our hearts. So, you are no longer a slave, being a slave to your body, right? Because if you're a slave to your body, you could be controlled, right? By other people. It's like, okay, well, your body says you don't like pain. So then someone can just cause pain and force you to do whatever they want you to do. Or they withhold the food, make it to where you can only eat if you do what they want, right? So, so you're no longer a slave, but a son. And if a son, then an heir through God. Formerly, when you did not know God, you were enslaved to those that by nature are not gods. Yeah, like the people in the government, the people in the corporations, they're not gods, and we are enslaved to them, right? That's where Christianity doesn't have to only be an inward thing; it could be an outward thing as well. Yeah, and we were talking about this. All right. Ooh, yeah. Okay, so this was the original one that like piqued my interest and about symbolism of the suns. So there's this pass like passing baton from Elijah to Elisha. So let's see. Uh, so so Elijah said, "Hey, just stay here. I got to go do something." And then, of the 60, 50 said, "No, like we want to go with you," right? And Elisha also wanted to go. Like, no, like we're going wherever you're going, Elijah, right? So he's like, "Okay, fine." So they're walking. As they were both standing by the Jordan River, then Elijah took his cloak and rolled it up and struck the water. And the water was parted to the one side and to the other, till the two of them could go over on dry ground. So, in a symbolic sense, right, water is the heart, right? It's the emotions, it's the intuition, right? And to be able to actually separate the emotions is quite a godly thing, right? Because most people don't even know what their emotions are or what they mean, right? We have 7 emotions. They're distinct. They're saying different things, and people let them stack up and just feel multiple emotions at the same time. And we have to be able to separate the emotions. Not like separate ourselves from our emotions. We have to separate the multiple emotions, because it's like if you're playing a video game and there's a delay, right? And you press a whole bunch of buttons and then it does, there's a backlog, right? You wouldn't be able to play the game effectively. And that's what our emotions are like. It's just like our emotions are the buttons on the controller. And because the mind gets bogged down in kind of scrupulous sort of like this fear and this anxiety about the consequences of the actions, like there's just this blockage and the emotions just keep going because and building up. And so there's just this backlog of emotions. And so to separate them is really important. So Elijah, he took his coat, which is kind of like a role that you put on, or I guess you could say like who he was, his persona. And so when they had crossed, Elijah said to Elisha, "Ask what I shall do for you, because I am taken from you." Right? It's like basically, I'll grant you a wish. I see that you want something from me, so I'll give you a wish. And Elisha said, "Please let there be a double portion of your spirit on me." That was a good request, right? So basically, the amount of love and truth that you have, I want that, right? I want to understand like you understand, and have that capacity for love that you have, right? I want to, if you see it as like letting the Holy Spirit into your life, it's like I want to let it in as much as you're letting it in. Like I'm letting it in a little bit, but you seem to be having it in a lot more. So I want a double. I want twice as much of the Holy Spirit in my life as I had before, right? That's a great thing to ask. So, and he said, "You have asked a hard thing." Yeah, it's really hard because, if you knew how to do it, you would have already done it. It's like you don't even know what it's going to look like once you do it, right? Um, Yet, if you see me as I am taken from you, it shall be so for you. But if you do not see me, it shall not be so. That's really cool. Okay. So he's saying, I'm going to leave. If you see me when I leave, your wish will be granted. If you don't, then it's not, right? So what does this mean? It means that if you notice when this you could say these two wolves inside of you, right? When you notice that the good wolf gets pushed out of you, right? And then the bad wolf is dominant. If you notice when that happens, then you can obviously then bring the good wolf back in, right? The Holy Spirit, right? So that's what he's saying is if you actually notice when this hostility, this vindictiveness comes out in you, and then you do something about it, you're obviously going to have twice as much of the Holy Spirit in you, right? It's like if you notice when weeds are growing up in the garden and choking out the good plants, and you pull them out, that's a lot more nutrients that are going to go towards the good plants, right? But if you do not see, okay, and as they still went on and talked, behold, chariots of fire and horses of fire separated the two of them. And Elijah went up by a whirlwind into heaven. And Elijah saw it, and he cried, my father, the chariots of Israel and its horsemen. And he saw him no more. Then he took hold of his own clothes and tore them in two pieces, And he took up the cloak of Elijah that had fallen from him and went back and stood on the bank of the Jordan. And they took the cloak of Elijah that had fallen from him and struck the water, saying, "Where is the Lord, the God of Elijah?" And when he had struck the water was parted to the one side and to the other, and Elisha went over. Right. So, I mean, there's a lot here, right? I mean, this is like this verse is where all of the Merkabah mysticism comes from, which is like the whole Kabbalah sort of thing, and that's, I think, the wrong direction to take it. Right? The right, I mean, one, even just a horse, right? A horse is motivation, right? Um, so because it's a mammal, so it's a thing of the heart, and a horse is motivation. A chariot is a masculine thing. It's a machine, right? So it's saying, like, these two things are working together. Israel means, so there's the name Jacob has the one of the letters is actually the number 2, which is, and then Israel has the number 1 in it, which means unity. So when Jacob got his new name, he was literally, like, he stole the birthright from his brother. His brother was understandably mad about that. And then his brother goes several years, builds up an army, and then goes to take back his birthright. And so Jacob's running away, and he's like, "Oh crap!" Like, and he's trying to figure out a way out of this mess, right? And he's like, tells his servant, like, "Hey, here, like, here's some sheep or whatever. Like, go tell my brother this is a gift." And it's like, "Bro, like, I'm coming to like take all of it. Like, you screwed me over. I'm not over it. And you giving me a few sheep is not going to fix this problem, right?" And he keeps sending more and more and more. Well, then he sleeps, right? Goes to sleep, and he actually rests his head on a rock. That's pretty weird, right? Like, literally, I think about, like, if you read that, like, specifically says that Jacob rested his head on a rock. You're like, bro, like, you'd have to be pretty dumb, like really dumb, like the dumbest human to ever exist, to not find us a softer object to use than a rock as a pillow, right? Like, that's like, that it literally says he used a rock as a pillow, and it's like, obviously that has to be symbolic, otherwise he'd be retarded. And it is symbolic, right? Um, because a rock is a memory, right? It's a question we haven't answered, right? Or I mean, a rock is a memory, and the memory that he was sleeping on, that he was, symbolically, like, thinking about, was the memory of, what it means to be family, and like whether it's worth it to have steal a birthright if it's going to come back and burn you later, right? So, we're actually going to get into that real quick, that symbolism, because it does end up being really important. That was the second one I found after I found the word son. But so he was in this me us versus them kind of mentality. There's two people. There's us and there's them. And then he wrestles with God, and I think it's like he wrestled with that question, is like, hey, maybe I should just be family. Maybe I should just, like, be good to my brother. Newsflash, and that's when he got his new name, right? So he decided to let go of this us versus them, this two separate people, and then it's just like a one person. And so that was the magical change. So when it says Israel, it's definitely not referring to a nation. Okay, that's so it's a chariot, right? Like, so logically, a way, like, it's just like understanding logical fallacies and not falling into them, right? That would be you could say a chariot. And then the horseman is this motivation, right? To keep applying what you should be applying. Let's see. When the great crowd heard all that he was doing, this is Christ in Mark 3, they came to him, and he told his disciples to have a boat ready for him because of the crowd, lest they crush him. For he had healed many, so that all who had diseases pressed around him to touch him. And whenever the unclean spirits saw him, they fell down before him and cried out, "You are the Son of God." And he strictly ordered them to not order them not to make him known. That's pretty interesting, right? Jesus there, the unclean spirits are noticing that he's the Son of God and falling down before him, right? That's definitely not something people talk about. We get it later. But the reason I brought up this verse actually was just because here it says James, the son of Zebedee, and John, the brother of James, to whom he gave the name Boanerges, is the sons of thunder, right? So I brought up just because the word sons there, and then it's like, what would that mean? Sons of thunder, right? Oh, this is a good one. 1 John 3. See what kind of love the Father has given us that we should be called the children of God. And so we are. We are the children of God, right? The reason why the world does not know us is that it did not know him. Beloved, we are God's children now. And what we will be has not yet appeared, right? Like, so it's like, okay, all we know is we want to align with Jesus, but we don't really know what that looks like because, like, only Jesus is doing it right. And all we have is these kind of halfway examples of different things, right? So it's like we're trying, like we know, like, but we don't know what it's and what we will be, like what's going to look like when you let the Holy Spirit fully into your life, which I think it's just a process of always letting it in more and more. I don't know if you ever just you're done, right? But we know that when he appears, that's Jesus, we shall be like him because we shall see him as he is. And everyone who thus hopes in him purifies himself as he is pure. So just holding the hope that you can align with Christ purifies you, because as you hold on to that, like that hope gets tested and you get your daily bread, your daily what is this, and that process, this iterative formula sort of just solves itself day after day. We're more and more like Christ. Everyone who makes a practice of sinning also practices lawlessness. Sin is lawlessness, right? You know that he appears in order to take away sins, and in him there is no sin. No one abides in him keeps on sinning. No one who keeps on sinning. So, and it says keeps on sinning. So it's like, it's not like you're perfect, right? You just like don't persist in what you're doing that's wrong. You actually notice that it's wrong and then you change, right? No one who keeps on sinning has either seen him or known him. Little children, let no one deceive you. Whoever practices righteousness is righteous as he, Christ, is righteous, right? So this idea of practicing righteousness, just like practicing medicine, right? It's just something you keep trying to do. You don't have the right answers. You never in medicine have the right answers because, like, you just never. You don't know all the side effects. You don't like you can have a lot of information about it, but yeah, it's just you try to keep aligned with being a good doctor, and hopefully you get better every day, right? Same thing as being a Christian, right? Whoever practices righteous is righteous as he is righteous. Whoever makes a practice of sinning is of the devil, for the devil has been sinning from the beginning. The reason the Son of God appeared was to destroy the works of the devil. No one born of God makes a practice of sinning, for God's seed abides in him, and he cannot keep on sinning because he has been born of God. By this, it is evident who are the children of God and who are the children of the devil. Whoever does not practice righteousness is not of God, nor is the one who does not love his brother. Which actually leads us back to the beginning, right? Wow, can't believe I skipped past this, right? So, whoever does not practice righteousness is not of God, nor is the one who does not love his brother, right? So, the very beginning, right? What was the problem? It was this mentality of Cain said, "Am I my brother's keeper?" Right? Um, and that's the answer is we should be our brother's keeper, right? Um, let's see. I don't know if I had that one filled out. We should just end on doing a few of these. So I guess there's like the word begotten is kind of interesting. That's like kind of a point where you've, I don't know if gone from the student to be a teacher, or at least somewhat of a teacher. I mean, it's not it's not like you stop being a student, but I think that this begotten, right? This is Psalms 2. I won't read the whole thing, I guess. Um, the Lord said unto me, "You are my son. Today I have begotten you," right? Because that, did I even put it over? Well, just when Christ was baptized, right? Oh yeah, right here in Matthew 3. As soon as Jesus was baptized, he went up out of the water. At that moment, heaven was opened, and he saw the Spirit of God descending like a dove and alighting on him. And a voice from heaven said, "This is my beloved. This is my beloved Son, whom I love." Oh, that's like, I guess just I normally don't use this translation. "This is my beloved Son, whom I am well pleased." Right. So one of the Greek translations actually says, "In this day I have begotten thee." It's literally they use this scripture for one of the Greek translations. So it's possible that was kind of like the seal of approval of like, okay, yeah, you're ready to be a teacher. Oh yeah, this was interesting. But when he saw, so this is when he was going to John the Baptist, right? But when he saw many of the Pharisees and Sadducees coming to where he was baptizing, he said to them, "You brood of vipers, who warned you to flee from the coming wrath? Produce fruit in keeping with repentance." Just like, by their fruits you shall know them. Like, what are the fruits of them coming to harass John the Baptist? It's like, what do you hope to gain from this, right? Like, it's kind of like, the shills like that attack people online. Like, what do they hope's going to come from it, right? And do not think you can say to yourself, "We have Abraham as our father," right? They're saying their DNA alone is going to save them, right? That's exactly what, someone who is an atheist, like, my DNA is going to do fine, right? I tell you that out of these stones, God can raise up children for Abraham. So it's interesting, out of these stones, right? So what does it mean, like when you see stone in scriptures? Um, so here's Joshua in the Old Testament. Then you shall tell them that the waters of the Jordan were cut off from before the ark of the covenant of the Lord. When it passed over Jordan, the waters of the Jordan were cut off. So these stones shall be to the people of Israel as a memorial forever. Right. There's another one where they put a rock and named it Ebenezer after they crossed the Red Sea, saying, "Until this point, God has helped us." Right. So basically, just it's that a stone is a stone of remembrance. It's a testimony of what has happened. And so you see this in Matthew 16:13. You have now when Jesus came into the district of Caesarea Philippi, he asked his disciples, "Who do people say that the Son of Man is?" And they said, "Some say John the Baptist, others say Elijah, and others Jeremiah or one of the prophets." He said to them, "But who do you say that I am?" Simon Peter replied, "You are the Christ, the Son of the living God." And Jesus said unto him, "Blessed are you, Simon Bar-Jonah, for flesh and blood has not revealed this to you, but my Father who is in heaven. And I tell you, Peter, and on this rock I will build my church, and the gates of hell shall not prevail against it." Right? So this is one where the Catholics are like, this is where the Catholic Church started. If you think about it symbolically as this rock being a testament, and what is this testament? It's a testament that Peter had, you could say, a revelation from God. As God told him, not like, I don't know if in person or whatever, like he had an impression from God, or received a message from God that Jesus was Christ, the Son of the living God, right? That was so that was probably, who knows if he was praying or whatever, that's where he received that testimony. And it's like, upon that testimony of Jesus is the rock that the church is built on, right? And I will give you the keys of the kingdom of heaven, right? Well, what is the kingdom of heaven? We'll go into that in another video. It's like a long sort of thing. And whatever you bind on earth should be bound in heaven, and whatever you loose on earth should be loosed in heaven. Then he strictly charged the disciples to tell no one that he was the Christ, right? So just when you notice rocks, like even I didn't put on here, right? Moses strikes a rock in the desert and then water comes out, right? It's kind of interesting because the rod, um, the rod is the willpower. So you have the heart, the mind, and the willpower. So the willpower is also like a tree, which is also a choice, right? So if you, in a dream, you have a bunch of trees, it means there's lots of choices in front of you. If there's no trees, that means you don't see any choices, right? If you're in the desert, right, there's no trees, there's no choices that you see. All you see is a bunch of tiny rocks, which there's a lot of tiny memories. So you're like, I don't even know what to make out of all these memories. In that case, you look for the biggest rock and you go after it, right? You hit it with your willpower. You're like, I'm going to tackle this rock. And what comes out? Water. Or love, right? So the symbolism is super cool. Here are just two more about being born of Christ. So anyway, this was fun. Thanks for everyone that tuned in. If you know someone that a specific part of this helped or whatnot, like feel free to share it. It'd be cool. I just really hope that the energy that Charlie Kirk kind of put out in the world doesn't get that spark doesn't die, not just like in a political sense, but just like, hey man, like Satanism really did take over. And I mean, in a lot of ways, and I could go into that, another day, but we need people to be focused on trying to be like Jesus. The whole world will be better if everyone tries to be like Jesus. Um, and that doesn't mean, wearing the same sports jersey that our specific flavor of Christian culture, wears. It means, trying to embody and practice the virtue that Christ has. And it's possible. It is possible. And anyway, I love you all. And yeah, I hope the best for all of you. So